Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, we bum a smoke from Mr. Miyamoto. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. We've got a good show for you today. We're going to be talking about the news from the week, including the incoming Indie World Showcase and the success of Bloodstained on Switch. And then on Thursday, we're either going to be talking about that Indie World Showcase, or we're going to be curating our own Zelda trilogies. But Mark, in the meantime, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and I always love when we hedge our bets on Thursdays.
Yes. I mean, look, sometimes we're pretty sure we're like, there's going to be a direct. That's what we have to talk about on Thursday. And then we don't come up with a concept. we have a concept because we'll get to it. But like, there's a very real possibility that there won't really be anything like immediately newsworthy and like that we have to talk about from this Indie World Showcase.
Yeah, I feel like that's been not that they haven't been fun to watch, but I feel like that's been the case for the last couple of them, where there hasn't been like any like huge megaton announcements.
Yeah, and so if there are megaton announcements and we're wrong, then that's what we're going to talk about. Look, we're building in contingency plans. we're getting to a point in quarantine. We're getting to a point in this heat wave where it is like, yes, let's build up what happens if, right? Like,
right.
You know, are we freezing water? You know, just in case, like we need to keep things cold. Like, yeah, you bet.
Yeah,
you bet.
Exactly. Have a plan so that and then you don't have to worry about it.
That's right. Speaking of plans and having them, would you like to borrow my copy of Sonic Forces? It's back in the mail. Mark, I'll have you know that you can borrow my copy of Sonic Forces. All you have to do is send us an email to Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And give us a mailing address and we will send it to you. Mark, I am now sending Sonic Forces out without its box. I'm sending it in an envelope with all of the game card itself and all of the stuff that goes with it. And I'm just sending it in an envelope with postage. And so here's hoping it doesn't get destroyed in like a mail sorter.
Right, like a thresher that they put all the mail through. I fully support this. I am curious as to why.
Because it is a much simpler process, because all I need to do is take an envelope, take two envelopes, address them both and stamp them both. It is far easier than getting a large, like inflexible two of them from the post office, addressing them, having them put the postage on. This is a much more like DIY. I don't have to actually like go in and, you know, like wait at a counter and stuff. So that is why.
Makes total sense.
If it does not work, we will probably never know, because I put as the return address just my address, and instead of putting my name, I put NCS on it. So and I didn't put the apartment number. I just put the street address. So if that envelope is determined to be undeliverable, I'll never know. It'll never.
Do you know
get
what?
back to me.
I firmly believe that the Postal Service would find a way to get it back to you.
You really?
I really do. They can like track people down. It's pretty magical. And if not, we'll just blame it on whoever you sent it out to. We'll never know.
Yeah, great point. And look. The person that I did send Sonic Forces to most recently did send me an email back saying, how long can I keep it before returning it? Or when would you like me to send it back to you? And I said, hey, the beauty of the Sonic Forces borrowing program, and this goes for everyone, is that I am not telling you. No one can tell you what to do.
It's like Outback. It's like Outback Steakhouse.
Yeah, no rules, just right. And when you're here, your family. It's also it's also like Olive Garden.
I want my baby back. I was really reaching for that one.
That's okay. What's no, I don't know. I couldn't even think of the name Texas Roadhouse. Is that?
Oh yeah. Also, thank goodness it's Fridays. But really, I was joking, of course, about blaming the person who you sent it to, because the Sonic Forces program is a perfect borrowing program, and so of course, whatever happens was meant to happen.
100%. All right. Oh, Mark, we don't have it on our show notes here. So maybe that it is inappropriate for us to start talking about it now. But in October, to celebrate Mario's 35th anniversary, we are going to be doing an episode all about our favorite Mario memories, our favorite memories with the Mario franchise. And look, Mark and I are just two people. Maybe there'll be a third person on the episode. I don't know. We need your Mario memories, the moments that you had with them, when you were blown away, when you were moved to tears, to laughter, whatever, however Mario has affected you, we want to know. I don't know exactly the date of this episode, but get your memories into us early. You can email them to Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And we will talk about them on the show. We want to go all out for October. It's going to be a whole month of Mario programming, and we need you to be a part of it. So please do that. Also, Mark, one more thing. Also not in our show notes. We're freewheeling here today. We would like more reviews on the Apple Podcast Store. So if you... Store? Maybe not a store. Apple Podcasts. Get in there, review the show. 5 stars? Or 4 stars. I don't want to sway you. Either way, as many stars as you think we deserve. We appreciate it. It helps us out tremendously. And wherever you can leave reviews helps us out a lot. We love seeing the feedback. So thank you for everyone who has done that. And thank you to everyone who's thinking about doing it, who's actually going to follow through. If you're not actually going to follow through, I may rescind my thank you. All right, Mark, are you ready to get into what we've been playing this week?
Yeah, let's do it.
Mark, an exciting update.
Ooh.
My Wii U I am now just calling it Big Game Boy Advance because I have loaded it up, as I've stated on previous episodes, with Game Boy Advance games that I've purchased from the eShop. It's the only eShop that allows you to buy GBA games. And I am going back and playing a handful of stone cold classics that I missed for whatever reason. GBA wasn't a big system for me. I know it was a big one for you, but I was just sort of out of it at that time. My apartment is small enough, and I have repositioned my Wii U in the mathematical center of the apartment, so I can now use the Wii U gamepad anywhere in the apartment, tethered to the actual console itself, right? Because you can't get the gamepad very far away from the thing. Oh. And go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's interesting. So is it not necessarily hooked up to a TV anymore? Is it just a console that now you can use the Wii U pad wherever you want?
That is exactly correct. So it was sitting in the entertainment center under the TV, but then it wouldn't reach from the bed, right? So if I'm in the bedroom playing in bed, it would disconnect, unreliable. So I instead moved it to the Switch shelf, which is sort of on the interior wall that separates the living room from the bedroom, and it can do that just fine. So there's no space in the apartment where I cannot access the Wii U through the Wii U gamepad. And if I truly want to throw it up on the TV, I can take the Switch's HDMI cable and just plug it in there.
That's awesome. That's and also it's interesting that it's just I guess it's a good 6 or 8 feet that you moved it, but that made all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I love that I am turning this piece of home console hardware into a big Game Boy Advance. And the screen is so big. It's so much bigger than a regular Game Boy
it's
Advance. It's
you're
right?
describing a duck. Oh, he's so big.
He's so big. It's so big. No, I do. I love it to pieces. It's so good. And, during, right now, like I alluded to earlier, we are in a bit of a heat wave in Los Angeles, and they are advising that we, are more responsible with our power usage between the hours of 3 and 10 p.m., which are prime air conditioning times. But also, if I'm turning on the TV or anything like that, that's a lot of wattage right there. The Wii U is has a famously low power draw. So I feel pretty good about playing that. Even in a time when we're supposed to be conserving power.
I'm so jealous of your like Game Boy Advance, like your big boy Game Boy Advance. I love it.
Yes,
I want one so bad. That's such a fun
game
idea.
Game Big Boy is that might be what I need to call it. So I've been using it to play the game just known as Fire Emblem on the Game Boy Advance, the very first one that was ever localized to the States or just any outside of Japan, I guess. And I'm loving it. I'm in like the 12th or 13th chapter right now, which means I've played through the entire prelude with Lynn. And also, I mean, only a Fire Emblem game could get away with a 10 chapter long prelude, something that you spend 6 hours on and be like, yeah, that's the tutorial. But I'm loving it. The pixel art is beautiful. I wish that all Fire Emblem games were this like simple and nice looking. Not that I don't love the rest of them, because I do. But yeah, so that is the form that my 2020 GBA Renaissance is taking right now.
And this Fire Emblem, I've never played it. Three Houses was the first one that I really dove into. This was before they started adding like the mode that I took advantage of, where permadeath you could turn off permadeath, right? Like it's not even an option in this game.
No, and there are no difficulty sliders or anything. The game is the game. But since I am playing it on a virtual console, there is a save state that I can take advantage of. But even that, you kind of got to be careful, because like if like your first three moves in any given fight like aren't right, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna like save this here, like you really do run the risk of like losing someone forever. But at any time you can always just turn the game off, start over, and start the fight again. Which I have done now a couple times, now that I am out of the out of the tutorial chapters. But I don't know, like I'm starting to get to the point where I may just let some characters die as I go. It's always that's a tough switch to flip, where you go from being like, no, everyone goes with me through every chapter, and then you're like, you know what? Some of these guys I don't love. Some of these guys can die and stay dead. That's okay.
Well,
but I'm loving it.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. It just sounds like so much fun to be able to like. It's been so long since I've played any of those games. It'd basically be like rediscovering them or playing them for the first time. A lot of cases, and that just sounds like a great way to spend the summer.
It also, one of the things that it has tipped me off to is that there is still a GBA Fire Emblem game that was never localized. There's that. There was a Rhythm Heaven game for GBA that was never localized, and there's Mother 3. So there's like a holy trinity of never localized outside of Japan GBA games that, like, man, if Nintendo wanted to like just sell something, a 3-pack of those, or put those in a GBA Classic or whatever, they'd clean up. Everyone would want it.
Well, Mother 3's coming any day now, right, Reggie? Right? Mother
right,
3?
Reggie? That's why they fired you, right?
So I'm still playing Paper Mario: The Origami King. Really enjoying it. I don't have a ton more to say other than like I never am really getting good at the battle system. I just have a lot of coins that I can throw at Toads to help whirl that puzzle around. And there's like a few instances, like there's like a sequence where you kind of like, in order to progress, you have to solve some puzzles using the like turning like the dial mechanic. And I'm like real bad at it. I'm still like, my brain just like cannot like view that battlefield and like solve puzzles that way under a time limit. Like it just is incredibly challenging for me. The height of the game for me has still been like that tower in Shogun Studios, where there's like different like little play vignettes in different styles that are all near and dear to my heart. But I am really enjoying the game. I just am like at the last ribbon, so I think I'm fairly close to like the end game. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It is definitely taken me a while, but I'm really enjoyed my time with it.
I feel like that's the pace you should be taking those games at, though, right? Like, you know, mainlining any video game isn't like super good for you or for the game, but like a Paper Mario game is like sort of intentionally, relaxing and meandering. So like, yeah, played it at that speed.
Totally.
I had a thought about Shogun Studios, that it feels a lot like the movie theater, or not movie theater, the like movie studio floor in Luigi's Mansion. Because we played through that section of the game together, right?
Yeah. Yes, it does. It does kind of. It's like a mix of that plus like, I don't even know, but like that sort of vibe, but then also like a theme park on top of it.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to play this game someday. All right, that's what we've been playing this week. Let's get into the new releases and what we might be playing next week.
Just one or two releases that we wanted to talk about this week. So on August 20th, Chinese Parents is released on the Switch eShop. This is a game that was originally released on Steam in like Chinese only, and like shot to the top of the Steam charts for a while, and is coming out on consoles, is coming out on the Switch on the 20th. It's a game where like you play, I think it's like almost like weirdly like a resource management or like strategy game where I think you play as a child from like the very beginning of their life through the end, and it looks really interesting. Basically, like the choices you make, right? Like you have to learn like skills that a child would learn, and then like those affect the way that you like go through life, and then you have to take like the big like college entrance exam that is a really really big deal for like kids in China. And then I think that like the choices you make, it's almost like there's like a new game plus, but just how in life, like how your parents' choices affect your life, the choices that you make in the first round, if you start a new game, like affect
like you are that
your progression in
child.
Like the next one. Yeah.
Oh boy, that sounds stressful, Mark.
It does sound stressful.
And then coming out on the 21st is, which I believe is the Friday. That's Friday. Is Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. Samurai Jack, one of those, like Adult Swim cartoons that has like a sort of rabid following. Not a series I was ever super able to get into. I like Gendy Tartarovsky, whatever his name is. I like his style, and to see that like in video game form seems pretty cool, and it's coming out on Friday. Also, I would suspect, and again, we will talk about this in a little bit, that there will be some, and it's out today, announcements of indie games coming out on Tuesday. But we won't know that until it happens. So, Mark, and any of these, are you thinking about picking up Chinese Parents, or is it just an interesting curiosity for you there?
Yeah, just a game that that I think is interesting. I don't know that I'm going to pick it up right now, but maybe when it goes on sale.
All right, well, let's close out the new releases. Now it's time for a regular segment on our show. It's time for 433. In 1952, American composer John Cage wrote a piece called 433, wherein a performer or group of performers didn't play their instruments for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. For the purposes of this show, our instruments are talking about Nintendo. So, for the duration of one performance of 433, Mark and I will talk about something not at all Nintendo related, thus fulfilling the contract of the piece. Mark, today I have asked that we discuss the original Jurassic Park trilogy of movies. I'm referring to here, not the books. Did you read the books?
Yeah, I did.
Jurassic Park and Lost World.
Yeah, around so I read Lost World when it like came out. I remember, or when it came out on paperback. I remember like buying it at an airport when I was like, I don't know, like 10 or 11 or something. And then like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even not that long, because I think we talked about it on this show, is that I checked out The Lost World from the library and was like, I'm going to reread it. And it was terrible. But I remember liking the book when I was a kid. But like
Yeah.
the book, reading it now, it's so obnoxious because like characters just like give this like scientific screed all the time, but they do it in a really like, somebody, it's just awful.
Yeah, everything just like super didactic and the sort of stuff that I like ate up as a kid because I was like, whoa, someone's talking about the world. I love the world. I don't really know what motivated it this weekend, but Sarah and I watched The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 on consecutive days, Saturday and Sunday. Skipped the first one, which is arguably the only good one. That's not true. But it's
I think it's true.
The best by a long shot. The thing is, okay, I for a long time sort of held the belief that Lost World was bad and that Jurassic Park 3 was bad, but I didn't have any expectations for it because like,
Right.
you just
Why
don't,
would you?
yeah, why would you? So like that redeemed it a little bit, that like my expectations were so low and I met it and it was a fun dinosaur movie. And so like it succeeds on those grounds. Reporting to you from the other side of this most recent viewing, that is absolutely not the case. Jurassic Park 3 succeeds on no level. It's terrible and subverts the like message of the two previous movies, because like Jurassic Park and Lost World have a very like anti-corporate, anti-the man, like that moneyed interests are going to get everyone killed, right? Like that's what those movies are about. And in Jurassic Park 3, the day is saved when Laura Dern calls the military into the island, and there's like a heroic Jurassic Park fanfare when like the army guys storm the beach. It's gross.
Yeah, that movie was famously like a nightmare in shooting and production, and so I'm pretty sure that ending was just like it feels like totally out of nowhere, and I am positive it was absolutely just come up with out of nowhere. But it does have one of my favorite Jurassic Park moments, which is Dr. Grant's dream sequence when the raptor is like talking to him.
Yeah, you're just like, Alan. He wakes up.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty stupid. So for as much as there is wrong with The Lost World, and there is quite a bit wrong with Lost World, it is still a Steven Spielberg movie, so it is still very well shot. And just like the language and pacing of characters being hunted by a dinosaur is still very good. Like the sequence where they've taken the baby T-Rex back to like, the camper. Yeah. And then like the two T-Rexes, like one on either side. Like Spielberg is so patient at like doling them out. Like you see one and like the head is hovering there in the window. And then like you see the reverse side and like down comes a second head. And it takes a little bit for you to be like, hold on, wait a minute. Hold on. There are two of these things. And then like it flips them over and it's like hanging over the edge. It's so cool. Like,
yeah,
there are parts of that movie that really work.
Yeah, like it does have some really good sequences, and like Spielberg is obviously a master. I feel like the problem with all of the sequels, including the most recent ones, is that the first movie's about like hubris a little bit, maybe not a little bit, but the first one's about hubris, and so like people don't necessarily know that it's completely stupid, but then like the rest of the movies, you have to. Like everybody knows it's a terrible idea at that point.
You gotta get past it somehow.
Yeah.
But that's sort of why Lost World works, is because Ian Malcolm is the perspective character, and his whole thing is saying how stupid it is. So like at every turn, he's like, oh, "You're not making the same mistakes. You're making all new ones." Right. Like it's I don't know. That's I guess we will never know. We'll never know what I was going to say about that. We were accompanied today by pianist Kyle Shaw. All right, Mark, let's get into the news.
Okay, so today, this morning, Tuesday, August 18th, Nintendo is showing a Nintendo Indie World Showcase at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So probably, maybe even, by the time you listen to this, the Indie World Showcase will have already happened, but as of this recording, it hasn't. The presentation is 20 minutes, and like the previous Indie World Showcases, will focus on indie games coming to Switch. I don't know, Patrick, how much speculation do we want to do, given that most people will have already watched the presentation by the time that they listen to this episode?
Yeah, I love speculation that is good for, at best, 9 hours. But sportscasters do it before a game, right? They say what they
During
think
a
is going to
game.
happen during a game. So look, we're doing great. I think so. They're it's always hard to know like what to expect from these things, right? Because indies, by their very nature, the reason they're having indie showcases is that they are lower profile games. But I do think that there are a couple high profile indie releases that are sort of lingering question marks at this point, including Hollow Knight Silksong, Axiom Verge 2, which was teased in a previous one of these, and then Deltarune. We got the first
that's
chapter
right.
of Deltarune, the follow up to Undertale. By Toby Fox. And so, like, we could get more information on any of those. Also, just because it is a big indie right now, Fall Guys on PlayStation and PC is a big deal. If that were coming to Nintendo and Nintendo platforms, that would be huge. But like, honestly, I don't have any real expectations. Those are just some sort of outstanding question marks that we have right now.
Yeah, I'm the same way. There's not really anything that I'm like. I feel like we have at the beginning of the Switch's life, there were so many indie games that
Yeah.
weren't on a Nintendo platform and weren't on Switch yet, and so there was like a flood of big like titles that have been around for like 10 years that you're like, oh, this is finally coming to Switch. And so those were the ones that for me had a lot of like I like recognized them. And so now when there's like these indie showcases, there's a lot of games that like I'm not already familiar with the name. And so it's hard for me to like guess as to what is going to be revealed. One thing that we know is not going to be shown off probably is Sports Story. So this is the sequel to Golf Story, which was released on Switch back in I think 2017. Oh, yes, exactly. You wrote that in the show notes.
Sure did.
So it was.
See, that is in the show notes. Sometimes things aren't in the show notes. This one is.
So when it was first revealed, Sports Story was originally set to release in mid-2020. But just yesterday, they put out a delay announcement trailer. This was on Monday, saying that, like the game's been delayed. It is bigger than they were, like once they got into it, it's bigger than they had originally anticipated, and no word yet on a revised release date. But it's one that I'm looking forward to. And a friend of the show, Greg Smith, last week he wrote an article for Collider listing, was it the 30 best games on Switch, 20 best games on Switch?
I feel like it was 25. Let's
25,
split the difference there
yeah.
and say it was 25.
And he had Golf Story on there, and I completely agree. I loved Golf Story, and I'm excited for whenever Sports Story comes out. But in the meantime, you should go check out Greg's article on Collider. It's a good
even
list.
though it does not include Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition, it is still a very good list. Mark, do you think there's, before we move off this topic, do you think there's any chance that there is a Cadence of Hyrule-esque thing here where an indie studio has been given access to Nintendo IP? Like, do you think there are more of those in the works, or was that like a one-time thing? We're never going to see it again.
I will never say never. I don't. So who knows if it'll happen in this Indie World Showcase? But I do think that it's something that we will see more and more of. Just like we've seen Nintendo be more open to collaboration with, like Cadence Hyrule is a great example, but also like Uniqlo, like for clothing, Lego more recently, like these like board games. Like Nintendo has always had some licenses, but I feel like they're very overt now about talking about wanting to expand their IP, and I think like partnering with these other studios in unexpected ways is something that I will not be surprised if we see more of in the future.
It also, this is maybe always the case, but it feels especially pronounced now that like the appetite for new Nintendo games is so big and like just so vast that like if they can partner with more indie developers and get games that look like Nintendo games, even if they're not Nintendo developed, that is good for the platform, and like answers some of those like, well, we don't even know what we're going to be playing on our Switches at the end of the year, which is something that we've said. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of those in the works, but yeah, who knows if anything is near any point of being announced or anything like that.
Speaking of announcements, that may be irrelevant by the time that you are listening to this. So WB Montreal, the team that was behind Batman Arkham Origins, and I don't think we've heard anything from them since, has
That's right.
teamed their new game on Twitter in a video. It played a coded message that reads, quote, "We have been expecting you, 818." And the one of the E's in Ben is like a 3. And then it reveals a countdown timer counting down to Tuesday, August 18th at 8 a.m. So today, again, probably by the time that you have already listened to this, it'll be revealed. So there are also flashes of 3 different insignia on the tees, none that match any currently existing in the DC universe. But the speculation around this game for a while has been that they're working on a Batman game based on the Court of Owls storyline from Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's New 52 run from, probably like 10 years ago at this point.
Yeah, well, from the beginning of almost 10 years ago, from the beginning of the New 52. Which is a storyline that I really liked, and the Court of Owls is a cool villain, or a cool set of villains, as it were. So like if that is the case, I was just about to say, if that's the case, I'm excited to see what they're up to. I'm excited to see what they're up to anyway.
Yeah.
A new Batman game is cause for excitement.
It's interesting that, we haven't heard from Rocksteady or WB Montreal for a lot of years now. And then we're hearing about both of their games in like a matter of like weeks. The WB Montreal one, like, I do wonder if it'll be a game, basically just like in the spirit of the Batman Arkham Asylum games, which makes sense. That was an incredibly successful series, and so it does make sense if like WB Montreal is going to continue on that. If that is the case, it makes me even more interested to learn about Rocksteady's like Suicide Squad game, to know how they like will differentiate themselves, or if they are like very similar, but they're just going to be released a few years apart or something.
My suspicion is that they are generationally different games. That whatever WB Montreal's game is going to be something playable on the current hardware, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, maybe Switch. Part of the reason why I put this item in the news, the most recent Arkham game has not appeared on Switch. Arkham City is on Wii U, but I don't think it's a particularly good version of that game. But regardless, like I'm kind of holding out hope that the WB Montreal game is one that we will be able to play on Switch. Because I don't think there's any shot that the Suicide Squad game ends up coming to current hardware.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, and probably like the Suicide Squad game is like a year or so away.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to point out about the Suicide Squad game is that the full title seems to be Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, which I thought was funny, because to me it sounded like the rides at Disneyland, where they're not just going to call it like the Little Mermaid ride or Monsters Inc. It always has some like horrendous subtitle where it's like Monsters Inc. : Mike and Sully to the rescue, or The Little Mermaid : Ariel's Undersea Adventure. And that's how I feel like this is, where it's like, oh, it's the Suicide Squad ride. No, it's called Suicide Squad : Kill the Justice League.
The thing is, without the colon, I think it's a really good title. If there's no colon, if it's just the Suicide Squad if it's kills the Justice League, that's funny. That is a funny game title. But they really dropped the ball on that one, possibly. I guess we don't know. The game hasn't technically been revealed yet, but we assume that because it's a website or something was registered as Suicide. No, it's the panel for this weekend at DC Fandom.
Yeah,
is revealed it as Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League.
The crowdfunded spiritual successor to Castlevania, called Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night, kind of had a fraught release on Switch. When it came out, it arrived 1 week later than the other versions and had like a number of performance issues. that they were kind of slow to patch. I think now it's in a fairly stable state, but it took a while to get there. Interestingly, in a Famitsu interview with creator Koji Igarashi, Iga revealed that the game sold best on Switch, saying, quote, that it was like well above their expectations, and that the game has in total has sold over 1 million units.
That is fascinating to me. For whatever reason, I know that indie games do tend to sell better on Switch than they do on other platforms. But for whatever reason, I didn't possibly because of the fraught release and it being like delayed by the week and then having performance issues. I was under the impression that people were just opting to play it on other platforms, but it seems like that's not the case.
Yeah, in that same interview in Famitsu, he talks about how the they were surprised as well, and his speculation is that because those Castlevania games, especially at the end of their lives, were so associated with Nintendo hardware, with the GBA, the DS, and also that those games in general always sold in North America. But he was saying that Bloodstained specifically sold 50% in the US, and he thinks that all of that had some effect on what platform people bought it on.
It's so interesting. And what are the other ones called? Curse of the Moon, the 8-bit ones. That those feel like very Switch releases to me, like having the more throwback 8-bit retro style. Do I need to pick up Bloodstained Ritual of the Night? Is that a game that I feel like it is?
I don't know. I didn't pick it up when it came out, partly because of the kind of middling reviews, but it's a game type I enjoy, and I liked do you know what, actually, Patrick? Maybe you should buy the GBA ones, not the one that I get the titles mixed up in my head. There's one that came out with the release of the GBA, and that one is well regarded, but I think there's a sequel on the GBA that people really like a lot. And so maybe that's what you should pick up.
Aria of Sorrow, Harmony of Dissonance, or Circle of the Moon? Which is it right now? Under oath.
I'll find out, and I'll text you.
All right, very good. Or if you know it at home, email us at nintendocartridgesociety@gmail.com. And let me know what Castlevania game I should play on the Game Boy Advance. I've got all 3 on my wish list, and I'm going to buy probably all 3 of them, but which one should I play first?
Iga also says that he wants to expand the series Bloodstained, and with 1 million copies sold, it seems like there's definitely an appetite for it, but he's also interested in doing something new first.
Why not combine the two and do a new game genre in that use the facade of Bloodstained to do not a Castlevania style game. Do a tactics game. Do an RPG.
Do the
do a rhythm game.
All the stuff you'd get with a Persona 5, right? With a Persona game.
Yeah, just blow it out. Although Hey Pikmin is not a good.
It's also kind of the reverse, going from Pikmin's going from a tactics game to a platformer, and this would be doing the reverse Hey Pikmin, where you're going from a platformer to a tactics game.
A Pikmin Hey.
Okay, here's an intriguing one. Is The Legend of Zelda: The Skyward Sword coming to Switch? And I know, listener, what you are saying, because you are a longtime listener, and you remember when we originally brought up these vague teases that Aonuma was, giving at Zelda concerts, and then Nintendo came out and released a statement, was like, no, we're not doing it. It's not happening. Stop asking us about it. And yet, at Wario64 on Twitter shared a link to the Amazon UK store for such a port, a Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword port for Switch. The link now leads to an inactive page, and this is, of course, just a rumor. Retailer listings mean nothing. But, Patrick, do you believe that this could be true?
I do sort of believe that it could be true, but it honestly just makes me more disappointed because like if this is something that's like popping up now, that means that like maybe it's gonna be part of like a November, December release. And then like we've got Pikmin 3 coming in October, and it's just like, uh-oh, are we gonna get these Mario ports or not? Like, do you know what I mean? Like it's the rumors are all circulating around so many different ports and HD upgrades and stuff, and like I kind of just want to play a new game now, and failing that I kind of want to play those Mario games, so like someday sure I'll be excited about it, but like I don't know, what do you think, Mark? Are you excited? Do you believe it?
Well, I do tend to believe it. I think, like it is the one of those like modern Zeldas, right? That has
Yeah.
it since Wind Waker that hasn't had a HD remake. Skyward Sword otherwise would just be on Wii. I am super curious to know that like if this is true, what is the control scheme like?
Yeah, how do you play it?
Because like we were talking about when we were doing our retro E3, when we were and they had the demo, the onstage demo for Skyward Sword. One of the huge like reasons that game was made the way it was made was so you could control the sword 1-to-1 with the Wiimote, and they make
And that
such a
you
big,
had to.
yes,
That like
exactly. They
that
make
that
such a
precision
big deal
was
about like the
yeah.
combat and how like the game in the demo anyways seemed a lot slower and more deliberate because the combat was required it because it was like a puzzle almost that you had to solve. But as someone who didn't play Skyward Sword because I never got a Wii Motion Plus, I am definitely interested in checking it out. But I 100%, if it turns out to be true, but I 100% agree with you that like even let's say that the Mario ports are coming this year, we have you know as much reason to believe they are as they aren't. We have Pikmin 3. Not this is not necessarily the Skyward Sword would not necessarily be this year. It could be early next year or something.
Sure.
But still, you're like Nintendo has a super weird 2020.
Just the weirdest release schedule, and like also I know they just came out on Wii U, but Twilight Princess and Wind Waker would be more exciting ports to come to Switch. Like they're better games, and I already know those HD remakes play well with like a standard controller scheme, and like I don't know, I I would be excited to play Skyward Sword, but like you mentioned that the pace of the combat seems very slow, and if they're unable to port the exact same like motion controls over, and you're just like doing button inputs or like swiping around on a thumbstick to like do all the same things, it's not going to feel the same way, right? Like I don't know, I almost feel like this is one of those unportable games.
Yeah.
Unportable, cannot be ported.
Yeah, no, I completely know what you mean. Part of me is like, having a brand new Zelda that I've never played before will be really cool. It's hard to speculate without actually knowing what it is because
Yeah, totally.
maybe it comes with a new peripheral for Switch that has that like 1-to-1 combat.
Switch Motion Plus?
You know what I mean? Like there are so many like possibilities, and like if I'm playing the Switch port and it's all button based and there's no motion controls, like it's going to be a completely different experience. And I wonder if in their remaking this game that they accommodate that. I do tend to believe it's true, but I'm super curious to know
how.
Yeah, exactly.
In doing a little research for this, a lot of news outlets noted that while the link that Wario64 provided leads to a dead page, the URL still contains the words Legend Zelda Skyward Sword Switch. But you can remove a handful of letters from any of those words and hit enter, and it will still bring you to that oops, this page doesn't exist on Amazon. So like that's You'll hear that if you hear this news item elsewhere, but it doesn't mean anything. You can put any words in there, and it'll give you this page doesn't exist.
There's a new Netflix documentary series releasing on Wednesday about video games called High Score. Reviews are out, and with the reviews, some like previews and fun tidbits from the series are coming out too. And NintendoEnthusiast.com wrote up a little article talking about something from the final episode of the series. As part of the final episode, they talk about the relationship between Argonaut Software and Nintendo and how that led to the development of Star Fox. Argonaut Studio, I think they Dylan Cuthbert, who we talked about in our Nintendo Sci-Fi, and I have the name here, Giles Goddard. I think they were like the two main guys from Argonaut Studios, and I think they're both British or from the UK. And basically, like, Nintendo brought them to Nintendo headquarters in Japan and had them work on developing Star Fox. And they talk.
It's so cool.
It's so cool. Yeah, and they talk about that experience on this episode of High Score. And in part of it, they give the quote. This is Goddard speaking. Says, "Quote: They meaning Nintendo never had anybody outside Nintendo working in the building. They actually made a separate office for us in one room on our own, basically segregated out. The only place in the office where they allowed Miyamoto to smoke was in this place, the area where we were." This is Cuthbert talking. "He'd light up behind us and he's like smoking away and we're like programming away and we're like, oh, is he back again? So we'd be trying to implement something quite interesting and then he just starts talking about trees or something, or, you know, just something completely out there. But we realized after a while that that's actually the reason why he's so much a creative genius. It's because his brain is kind of thinking about all these different things at the same time."
How delightful. More Miyamoto stories, please.
It does sound like, I mean, what like a I'm sure it was incredibly challenging, but what like a magical, you know, like experience.
Yeah, to get like a legend from the company who barges into your office space and then smokes at you for a while.
What a way to get secondhand smoke. Yeah.
I love it.
Nintendo Enthusiast also points out that according to a New Yorker profile of Miyamoto from 2010, he gave up smoking and pachinko when he turned 40. So he no longer smokes.
Do you remember that there's also like that story where someone was asking him what he does, like in an interview, like what do you do for fun and what do you do to relax? And he's like, well, I used to ride my bike to work, but they don't let me do that anymore.
Yeah. And also
he just slowly given up everything. Can't smoke, can't do pachinko, can't ride his bike.
Well, also I think he talks when like people ask him, he's a little bit like Sakurai, where he's like, I'm not going to talk about what I'm playing. Sakurai is like, I'm not going to talk about what I'm playing because people always ask me like, oh, is that character going to show up in Smash? And I think Miyamoto, you know, like he's talked about in the past how like things he was doing inspires games and how like Pikmin came out of his love of gardening and all that stuff. And I think he also chooses, at least for a while, he was choosing not to talk about what his hobbies were because it led to people like having all this speculation about that he would like turn into a game of some sort.
But we do know that one of his hobbies for a while was making a game out of measuring things or guessing the measurements of things, that he would like walk into a room and be like, hey, how long does everyone think this table is? And then they would guess and then he'd measure it with like a measuring tape that he just keeps on him at all times just so we can play this game.
Delightful. So
hold on, wait, Mark, along those lines.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is a question that has come up a couple times in my life, the last like week and a half or so. How big would a blueberry need to be for you to decide not to eat it? What is the size of blueberry where you're like, that blueberry's too big, I'm not going to eat it?
I think anything over half an inch and you're really pushing it.
Yeah, I think anything like I like the novelty of eating a very big blueberry, but I think like it's got to be smaller than a tomato or like
yeah. Have you encountered a lot of blueberries that are bigger than tomatoes?
No, none. But I mean, this is where that's where I first of all. Really, a blueberry the size of a golf ball has me asking questions, right? Like I'm suspicious of that blueberry.
Yeah.
But I think I would still try to eat it. Like, there's something about a big, juicy blueberry that feels like it's going to be good no matter what. But, like, you get to tomato size, and I'm just like, no, forget it. I'm not slicing a blueberry to put it on, like, a turkey sandwich or something. It's not going to happen.
So you would eat a blueberry up to the size of a golf ball, no questions asked?
I would probably ask questions, but it's like, where is the line where you're like, I don't care whose assurances I get, I'm not going to eat that blueberry.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I'm way more conservative than you. I'm like more than half an inch, and it's like, no, like I'm not risking it. Why would I risk it?
Yeah.
There's something about biting into a blueberry that's the size of like a big tomato that makes me want to hurl.
It's physically repellent, isn't it? I had a friend say that there was no size blueberry that was too big. And I was like, a beach ball? The size of the balls that the American gladiators roll around in? That's not too big?
No, that's an unfortunate mental image. Nintendo has announced a management briefing session that'll be held on September 16th in Tokyo. No specific details are given about what the briefing will entail. But they did say that they're not showing off any new products or services or anything like that. So it seems like it's going to be around like something corporate focused. It's not you or I was gonna say it's unusual, but I guess that's not really what I want to say. It's more that just like Nintendo doesn't hold an event like this very often. They of course have annual shareholder meetings and stuff like that, but so who knows what this is? Leadership changes? I don't know. It's an interesting meeting to be called.
So the current president of Nintendo is Tatsumi Kimishima, right? He's 70 years old. I mean,
no. He
no. Am I wrong?
You are wrong. He was probably the person who was like the interim president after Iwata died. The new president of Nintendo is young. Right. He's like in his 40s.
I'm gonna look this up because now that might be right. I feel bad not knowing it off the top of my head.
I think it's Shintaro Furukawa.
Furukawa, that's right, and he is a much younger guy and a business focused guy. Yeah, I don't know. Is there? There's really no way to predict what's going to happen at this thing, right?
No, we could wildly speculate. Yeah. What if we wildly speculate? It gets picked up by some like Forbes contributor, and then our listenership explodes because people think we have like inside Nintendo tips.
All right, so here it is. Kimishima's coming back. No, there's no way to know. It is likely that it'll be something that doesn't even trickle down to the gamers in any like appreciable way or any noticeable way. But yeah, it just is interesting that it is a thing that was announced, and just by being virtue of that it's tied to video games and tied to Nintendo, that it gets picked up, in these the circles that we travel.
Finally, Summer Games Done Quick is happening right now. It's an all virtual event this year. You can find the proceeds of it. All your donations go to Doctors Without Borders. You can find the complete schedule. It runs through Sunday. And you can donate at their website, gamesdonequick.com. There's a couple of runs that I'm looking forward to. On Thursday, on August 20th, there's an Ocarina of Time randomizer that's being played in co-op.
Oh, the Ocarina of Time randomizer.
I've never seen an Ocarina of Time one. I've seen Link to the Past ones in previous events, but I'm excited to see what the Ocarina of Time one is like.
The real trip is watching the Link to the Past Super Metroid mashup one.
Yeah. And then on Friday, August 21st, there's a Metroid Fusion 1% hard race, which I don't know exactly what that means, but I love Metroid Fusion. It'll be fun to see that run. And then there's a Breath of the Wild run, and the completion is getting all the dog treasures.
Boy, does that just mean that you have to like go to all of the dogs and wait for them to like start sniffing around?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
And then on Saturday, August 22nd, there's a Smash Brothers 64 run that's blindfolded. It's break the targets, all characters. This is another one that I've never seen run before. How do you do it blindfolded? I don't know. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of great games that are being played, even that aren't necessarily Nintendo focused. So you can check it out, the schedule at gamesdonequick.com.
Blindfold runs are always super fun. Was this only like a year or two ago now where someone did a blindfold punch out run? And like that there are a couple of points in the game where like you can just get sort of screwed by it, that like it just sort of randomly deals you a hand that like you can't deal with in blindfold. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, was it blindfold 2 people 1 controller?
I think it might have been. I think it was 2 people.
Games Done Quick is so cool.
Yeah, the blindfold runs are really fun. They are sometimes really sad if somebody like if they're super impressive when they're no matter how they're run, but sometimes like if you get off, you're basically like screwed for the entire run, and that's always a little bit painful to see.
And as always, I just want to assure anyone that if this sounds like something you're vaguely interested in, but are maybe a little bit worried about the like ins and outs of how they're like hacking these games or whatever, if you think that's a little bit like too esoteric or hard to penetrate, there's always someone there explaining what's happening and why what's happening is remarkable. So like for the Ocarina of Time randomizer, there will be someone there explaining how someone is like clipping through walls or whatever. So that's these are welcoming events, even if they feel like they're not. You know what I mean? So yeah, check them out. All right, Mark, let's get out of the news. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, you can share it on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you share stuff. We like that. It helps us out tremendously. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at NinCart Society. We also have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by Apipetty. You can get more of his music by going to apipetty.com or by listening right now. From my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying, and we got through the whole episode without talking about Fortnite. Whole thing. Thanks for listening.
Hey guys, I'm Stevie Nelson.
And I'm Dave Horowitz.
And we're the hosts of I Burn Everything.
It's a podcast about food and relationships, which, if we're being honest, are 2 out of the 3 things people want to talk about anyway.
What's the third thing?
Netflix.
Okay. We'd like you to rate, review, and subscribe if you like it. Anywhere you listen to your podcast. Apple? iPod?
Stitcher?
Do you still have iPods? If you have an iPod, do it on an iPod. I don't know.
If you have a Zune,
do it on your Zune.
It's probably hard to even charge them now.
Yeah, good luck. And if you have a Tamagotchi, you can't do any of this.
Yeah, you can't stream audio on a Tamagotchi, but you can feed them.
Yeah, you still keep
feed
feeding
those little buggers. They're hungry. Bye.
Bye.
Campfire.